The discussion is going to be recorded and as well as streamed on YouTube. So just to let you know that's going on. Oh, one sec. Yeah, so as I said before, the film, we would love to have your comments in the chat as well as any questions that you have. We're going to have a question and answer session in just a few minutes with Reverend Heng Sure and the director of the film, Ted Berger. So they will just, I think, do a little bit of discussion, and then they'll probably transition to the question and answer part, but I'll let them kind of decide the format for themselves. I'll just briefly introduce Reverend Heng Sure. Many of you probably know who he is, but in case you don't, I'll give you a sense of his accolades. He's an American Chan monk, a senior disciple of Master Xuan Hua. He currently splits his time between the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery in Berkeley, California, and Gold Coast Dharma Realm in Queensland, Australia. He received his master's in Oriental languages from UC Berkeley in 1976, and shortly thereafter he met his teacher, Master Xuan Hua, and he took his ordination. He received the Dharma name Heng Sure, which means constantly true or real. One of his best known accomplishments is a 2.5-year, 800-mile pilgrimage in the 3 steps, 1 bow tradition for world peace, going from South Pasadena to the city of 10,000 Buddhas in Ukiah, California. He made that pilgrimage along with Dr. Martin Verhoeven, who at the time was Heng Chao. After serving as the interpreter for Master Hua for many years, he also acted as the abbot of the city of 10,000 Buddhas. He's translated many sutra texts into English. And in 2003, he received a PhD in religion from the Graduate Theological Union at UC Berkeley. So Reverend Heng Sure is a very good friend of Ted. I'd like to allow him to kind of take over and say hi to everyone, as well as to introduce Ted.
Aumi Tofo. Hey, everybody. Thank you, Justin. I didn't realize that I was going to introduce Ted. So I will introduce Ted. Everybody meet Ted. Ted Berger, Edward Ted Berger, the producer of this wonderful film that we just saw, as well as all the other films of what used to be called Common Folk Film Production. Now it's called One Mind Production, if I'm not mistaken. And Ted is an Ohioan. I was happy to know that both of us are from Ohio. I don't know if that's an important point or not, but somehow Ohio is the breeding ground of future Buddhists, some left home, some at home. Dharma Master Heng Sure, our senior nun, is also an Ohioan. So Ted was educated in the U.S. and early on. I know, Ted, I don't have a thorough bio for you, so I will point out that you had learned Chinese and then somehow encountered the book Amongst White Clouds, or the Red Pine's book on
Road to Heaven.
Road to Heaven on Chinese Buddhist hermits, and inspired by Red Pine, Bill Porter's book on the Chinese Buddhist hermits of Zhongnan Shan, Ted went out to see if maybe this tradition was still alive, and sure enough, met his teacher, and then his Buddhist teacher, a Buddhist monk, a hermit, and then took his camera back on multiple trips and produced the film Amongst White Clouds, which I saw premiered in San Rafael, California one night. That was the first time I'd seen Ted. You appeared on screen and introduced the film, and I thought, boy, this is our story. This is our Chan Buddhist story on film for the first time. I was really excited about that. And then Ted, you went back to China multiple visits and made this film, Vows, and you made a film in Chinese called Shi, which is called Alms, all about the how Buddhist monks and nuns get their food, how the tradition of receiving alms. And then most recently put out a film called One Mind. And now this actually, One Mind is, I'm ahead of myself here. One Mind was released 4 or 5 years ago. And in One Mind, which I highly recommend to folks, Ted went into a monastery in Jiangxi province that's considered kind of the Marines of Chan Buddhist monks, a place called Zhenru Chansi, Zhenru Monastery. And at Zhenru Monastery, Ted, you must have been a monk in a past life because you have all these wholesome affinities with the current world of Chan Buddhism. They let you in with your camera, and you lived at Zhenru Monastery and filmed the monks out picking tea and the monks in the kitchen chopping vegetables. And then the most amazing one of all is you took your camera into the Chan Hall. And as far as I know, that's never happened before in a Chinese Chan monastery, Chan Hall, where the monks live on their bench, day and night, sleep there, eat there, sit and walk. And what a thrill to actually see it for the first time on the screen. So that was a film called One Mind, and it's a profound film. But then most recently, maybe I'll let Ted talk about his most recent film as we go along there. There was just a question that popped up. How can we... Okay, folks, if you don't mind going to the chat box, you'll see One Mind Productions linked right there. Okay, that's the answer to the question. Okay, so as the first speaker, who is not Justin, I want to say welcome to everybody. I noticed, looking at the participants, we have a large number of friends from Zen centers around the world, and I saw our Dharma friend Karma Lecce Tsomo is here. Welcome, Venerable Tsomo, and lots of people who are interested in learning more about Dharma Realm Buddhist University. So I do hope that you'll take this opportunity. But I'm lucky. I get the chance to ask the first set of questions to Ted. And then after we're done, I'm going to watch the time and leave some time for folks to type in your questions. And as Justin mentioned, if you have questions, put them in the chat box, and we'll try to field them and give you a chance. Can't promise we'll let everybody's question be asked, but we will have recorded everybody's question, and we also have your email addresses, and we'll see if we can't answer those questions. All right. So let me ask my first question. Ted, did you want to fill in the biography that that was just a real sketchy introduction to you. Would you like to say anything before or rebut equal time?
No, that's okay. That's
That'll do it.
That's fine.
Okay.
I have a bio on my website if anyone wants to fill in the blanks.
All righty. So my first question is this. Back when you and I first got acquainted with Buddhism back in the Midwest, Zen was pretty much all there was. The bamboo curtain had fallen since 1949, and there wasn't any chance to learn about Chinese the Chan tradition, Han Chuan Fojiao. There was no tradition. We heard about D.T. Suzuki. We heard from Gary Snyder, Philip Kaplow, Philip Whalen, Thomas Wright, people who had gone to Japan or who had met Zen here, but nothing from China, except one individual named Holmes Welch. And I noticed at the end of today's film, you said thank you or dedication to Holmes Welch. Holmes Welch was the scholar who gave us a peek. He wrote 3 books about Buddhism in China, but there was no, it was only text, there was no visual, except for one book of photographs. And so, as far as I know, your film, the one we just saw, called Vows, is the first time since Holmes Welch research that a Western journalist and video journalist was allowed to witness an ordination and to interview the participants. Could you describe some of the conditions for making that film? How did you get invited to witness it? When did it happen? How many people were on your crew? And kind of fill in the details around making this film.
Okay. Yeah, I dedicated this film to to Holmes Welch because I have this book. I lived with this book for months and months. It's an incredible source to fill in and explain things that I had observed, but hadn't necessarily had the time or the thought at the time to ask someone to explain to me. And so the book was quite a resource, and it was really exciting to find that book because it just helped to put together a lot of pieces for me. But I knew Venerable Mingying at Bailin Chansi. I had known him for some years already. And I believe it was just simply a phone call that I made to him, just to check in of what was happening. And he told me about the ordination. I said, can I come down with my camera? And he said yes, and off I went. I was living in Beijing at the time, so it wasn't much of a trip. And I went by myself. However, I usually would normally go out filming with my friend Lin, who's the character who's with me on the trail and the mountain path. But he didn't go with me on those trips. I don't remember why not, but I went on my own. So I was really just trying my best to capture something of the environment that was. I mean, I've been to Bailin Chansi many times, but during the ordination, it was really transformed. It was really quite a beautiful transformation. And I was trying to find the moments, the images that captured that feeling. And then actually, and I did a quick interview with Venerable Mingying, but he was very busy with the ordination. And I actually came back later to the monastery to do a lot of the interviews with the monks.
Okay.
Because it took the time of my having been in that space during the ordination for well, I could only stay a few days, and I don't it was just a few days, and I was observing, but there were a lot of things that I wasn't sure what it was I was observing. So I went back, I went over the footage, I used Holmes Welch's book to piece things together. And then I put together an idea in my mind of how I might be able to organize this into a film. I went back and I did the interview with Heng Sure, with the Mingying Fasher, and where he just, you know, he's an incredible character to do to narrate this film.
That's right.
He's not only a very accomplished practitioner, he has a very broad knowledge of Buddhist history and Buddhist philosophy. And so really fun to do that interview. And I had poured over some other books like Venerable Ifa's Buddhist monastic codes and a book on the Vinaya that I had when I was a student, and I pieced it together.
Yeah. So there's at the last 5 minutes of the film, on the day of the ordination, there's a long procession that comes by, and there's umbrellas being held, parasols. They're ceremonial parasols, and it's they go by in just an eye blink. But Venerable Master Jing Hui, the elder master, is there, the man who rebuilt Bailin White Cedar Monastery after the Cultural Revolution, when it was essentially just a pile of ashes, and the stupa and one tree, the White Cedar, that is the name of the monastery. And then also Master Minghai, his disciple, whom Master Jing Hui appointed as the new abbot. They go by, and I know that you have a long-running relationship with the younger abbot, Master Minghai, and so was there any reflections on that experience of watching the elders pass on the Dharma to the youngers who you interview?
Yeah, um, I love that moment in the film. It's really like it's a beautiful moment because I knew Jinhui Fashi. I had met him a few times and had um, some incredible conversations with him, and I'm just glad that his image is in one of my films. That's quite
Yeah,
special for me.
yeah,
Um, and Minhai Fashi, he was always very supportive over the years of my work. Ming Sure introduced me to him and presented the idea of making the film to him because there's a lot of the interviews needed to be arranged. Some of them were very spontaneous, and you can kind of tell in the footage which ones are spontaneous and which ones aren't. But some of them took some organizing, and I needed the support of the administration at the monastery to do that.
yeah, for sure.
And the characters who I was able to meet, the monks that I met that became characters in the film, were just so eloquent in
Yeah,
the way they, yeah.
yeah. Well, just one of the most effective parts of the film, I think, and what start the very, very beginning, is monks start talking about why they became monks.
Yeah.
It's in Chinese it's called the 出发心因缘, the causes and conditions when you first make this resolve to realize you could do this. You could join this 2,500-year-old order. And the monks share their stories, young monks, older monks, their inspiration to leave the householder's life and join the monastic sangha. That one monk called Chuanxue Fashi saw the monks walking by and felt a connection. Then the other monk who had the fortune told, he said, I was going to get married. I had my wife all picked out. And then somebody told my fortune and said, no, you're going to be a monk. Ha, ha, ha. When that was not even in his mind. Yeah. And those conversations punctuate the film. They're really powerful because you can see the light in the faces and the eyes of these men who were called out of the one who says, all I know was money and hard work. And no, I'm a monk, and I'm so happy. And so that's really wonderful that because you spoke Chinese, they were able to speak directly to you. And you could interview them and capture their own individual stories. That's really powerful.
It was a powerful experience for sure. It was. This film holds a very special place in my heart because of that.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it was that I was making the film at a period in my life where I was committing to a different path. In my life with my wife Agnes, and so it was interesting to make the film during that time. And actually, we very much made the film together, Agnes and I. There was a tremendous amount of material that and there's a lot of, more than any of my other films, there's a lot of things that need to be explained so that you know what you're seeing. And it was a monumental task to link it all together in a way that made sense and got across that and express the gravity of the moment.
Yeah. Well, as one of the monks at the end of one of the last ones interviewed says, this is the transference of a lifestyle tradition transferring over, and in a systematic way. These men and women they learn how to bow, they learn how to receive alms, they learn how to walk, they learn how to put their robes on, they learn a different way of sleeping and eating. But I think most important, he mentions, they learn how to turn their desire mind around. They call it the great reversal. You in Buddhist technical term, you attempt to dry up your outflows. Coming out your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, most important, the mind. You learn to turn that around. And this, as you describe, the three mandalas of the novice, bhikshu, and bodhisattva precepts have been bringing men and women in China into the Buddhist Sangha for nearly 2,000 years. And your film succeeds in sharing that inner experience. The one monk who says, I was really afraid. I was afraid I couldn't. I looked at this ancient sacred order and I thought, what if I can't make it? What if I can't get all the way through? And then he laughs and says, I made it. So could you reflect a bit on that experience? The film really conveys this sense of something powerful and ancient happening.
Oh, that's a lovely compliment for the film. I'm happy that it captures that. That of course was the whole. Yeah, that was the driving motivation for a lot of choices for how I made the film. There's definitely, I was, when I was there was a consistent sense of awe of what was happening around me, you know, and oh, my daughter's come to say hi.
Oh, nice.
And
Hi.
yeah, we're talking. We're talking about things.
Ami
My daughter, everyone.
Oh, nice. What a cutie. Yeah.
So, where were we?
So we're saying about the sense of awe. The sense of awe at this.
Yeah.
So let me say it again. So the monk who said, he said, we're making vows. So the monk who said his inner experience of fear that he might not have what it takes to get all the way through.
Yeah.
He said, I'm making vows the rest of my life. I'm going to join human history's longest running continuous fraternity. And he says, now we live to uphold the Buddhist teachings. And the film really conveys that. So that was, you know, I got goosebumps watching because it reminded me of my similar experience.
Yeah, good. That's great. Yeah, the experience of being in that environment during that particular time, as I said, was just awe-inspiring. And it was very moving to be in the presence of well, there were hundreds of monks involved in that.
Yeah, 200.
Is that what? Yeah, he
200.
says 200. And he said that was a smaller ordination than they've had in the past, but still, there was this sense of being in that space with them while they were in this process was really moving and incredible. Yeah. I've had an affinity for monastic life from the time I discovered the Dharma. It's not the path that I chose, but I feel very fortunate, very blessed to be able to spend time in these spaces with people who are committed in this way. Yeah, just being around that sense of commitment.
Yeah,
and then that transformation that's happening for them internally is just, it's really, you know, for me, it was incredible to be around that. And that's something I can only.
Let me highlight that of all the filmmaker, we have, we're blessed with the International Buddhist Film Festival coordinator. Gaetano Maeda is a local friend in Berkeley. And of all of the filmmakers around, I don't know anybody besides you, Ted, who turns your camera on the life of Buddhist monastics and says, take a look. You know, you let us in a place that nobody else goes. So what were some of the challenges that you faced as a filmmaker? First of all, you're an American. You're a journalist carrying a camera and a microphone into a Buddhist community. You speak fluent Mandarin, so that wasn't an issue. But did you get any guidelines or boundaries that they gave you as you told this story?
Yeah, certainly. During that period, there are a lot of areas and a lot of things going on with the monks who are in the ordination process that, of course, was completely out of bounds for a layman like myself. Mm-hmm. And so that was immediately, as a filmmaker, that was, how am I going to make a film about this? But in the end, I decided that the ordination is a background for the conversation about commitment. For me, the film, I call it Vows because for me the film is about commitment.
Mhm.
And so as I said, I talked to Venerable Ming Hai and Venerable Mingyo, and they were on board with me making the film, but there were just places that, certain things that wouldn't be captured on film.
Yeah.
And but otherwise, I was very comfortable in that space because I'd spent a lot of time in that monastery,
Yeah.
and I knew a lot of the monks that were there at the time, so I felt very comfortable and was able to do the work that I wanted to do as an artist to capture the footage that I wanted.
Yeah. Friend of the monastery, Andy Ferguson, has also taken numerous Zen groups into to Bailin Si. So of all the various Chan monasteries functioning in China, Bailin Si is one of the places where Westerners can very much feel welcome. So Master Mingying explains, he gets a lot of screen time explaining the ceremonies, the protocol. He seems really comfortable talking with you about these complex, sensitive matters of ordination, where men and women, really transform from their bone marrow out. So some of the monks don't want to talk to you. Most of them do. The younger ones, so the one you interview, you ask questions of the postulants who are about the ordinees who are about to go through, and they're like, of course, they're like, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I'm not in the door yet. Yeah, so oops, sorry,
Yeah.
But the other monks they seem really enjoying the conversation with you as they tell their stories. Pretty special.
Yeah, and those young monks that sort of I asked them the question, well, how does that feel? And
Right.
When I look back at the footage and watch that, I thought, oh,
Yeah, he's not
sort of like I did not handle that well. I sort of, because I remember I was walking down the walkway. I had my camera, and they all emerged from a doorway very suddenly, and I started talking to them on camera, and
right.
So I decided to leave it in the film because I like that. I like that moment because it's
honest.
It's a very honest moment. Yeah.
These guys are at the bottom. They're at the bottom of the totem pole. They're not going to speak up on behalf of the sangha. They don't. They're not even ordained yet. So
that's certainly a part of that. Yeah. Indeed.
Okay, I got one more question from me, and then I think there are lots of questions we want to add, which is that we didn't see any women in robes.
Yeah.
And that's the case when we've been to China too, that there are Buddhist nuns, large communities of Buddhist nuns, but each monastery, each teacher seems to handle them in a different way. Was there any comment about, did you see any Buddhist nuns, or what was the situation there with women in the Buddhist monastic sangha?
Yeah, the ordination for the nun ordination is happening at the same time, but it happens they happen in succession. The nun ordinations were usually in the late afternoon, and so I did actually witness what I could of that ordination, but I didn't have the same kind of access as filmmakers call it. I didn't have the same entry way into that community of nuns, and that's I'm really happy that one of the characters in my film, A Mountain Path, is a nun, and that's really special for me because in my other films I'm not able to include the experience of nuns, and so in this film it was the same kind of situation. So I did take some footage, and one day I would like to make that film. But I didn't have the material at the time to include it.
This would be a good time for you to talk about the mountain path. Your latest.
Sure. Many of you in the audience probably might know my first film, Amongst White Clouds. I made that film 15 years ago, and recently, a few years ago, I went back to my footage from those days, those weeks that I spent in the mountains with my camera, meeting with the hermits in the Zhongnan Mountains. And when I went back to the footage, I discovered it was like when you pick up a book that you've read years ago and you pick it up again, and wow, I don't remember it being like this. It just was totally transformed. And I think that's 15 years of I'd like to think it's 15 years of practice. It's 15 years of reading scripture, because there's a lot of references, just casual references to scripture, to sutras, that I missed when I was 27. And now when I went back, wow, he's referencing this sutra and she's referencing that parable or something. So there was just all of this, these amazing moments that I kind of missed as my younger self. So I decided I need to make a new film with this material. And so I started from the ground up and made a new film with that footage.
Nice.
What the mountain path is. Yeah.
How can people access it?
If you go to my website, at the top of my website, there is a link. It says home use, I think, purchase or something like that. And there is a link there to a Vimeo showcase, they call it. It's all 4 of my films are in one place, and you can rent or buy any of those films.
Nice. So retreat centers or Zen monasteries or Zen temples, Tibetan communities could all go to your website, One Mind Productions. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
And find the films there. Yeah.
You can find them there. Yeah.
Feature-length films and footage you'll never see anywhere else, because it's not there. Ted has gone where only Bill Porter went before, from a Western world, from a Western perspective. So, yeah. All right. Thank you for that. So, your teacher, Karma Lecce Tsomo, wants to know, what year did you make the film, and where is Bailinsi Monastery located?
What year did I make? I was trying to remember exactly that. I think I went the first time, it was 2007. I think the ordination was in 2007. And then I must have gone back probably the next year. But I didn't finish the film until 2013, I think, is when I released it. It was a very slow process. As I said, it's the most complicated film in terms of content, and technically, it was the most difficult editing I've done. So it took a long time. And Bailin Chancellor is south of Beijing. It's south of Beijing.
It's in Hebei.
It's in Hebei, and they have a bullet train now. I think it's only 45 minutes. Or you've been recently, haven't you?
We didn't take a bullet train. It was longer. It was quite a few hours into the night train. But now it's Zoom.
Yeah, you can zip down there like a commute now. It's pretty incredible. Yeah, that's where it is.
Alrighty.
Good to see you are in the audience, Venerable. Karma Lecce Tsomo. Lovely to see you again.
So let's see here. Does a question mixed? Does Guiyi Sambao necessarily make me a Buddhist? 出家人还是居士 or does 皈依三宝 plus 受持五戒? So does taking refuge of the 3 jewels make me a Buddhist, or do I have to, or is it a combination of 3 refuges and 5 precepts that make me a Buddhist?
Well, that's a question for you, certainly. I don't think I should. You, that's for
Short
you.
answer. Yeah, short answer. I hope so. If you've taken refuge in the 5 precepts and you're not a Buddhist, you weren't paying attention when you took the refuges. So the bigger question is, what's a Buddhist? Who's a Buddhist? And there's no single answer to that. The wider Buddhist community includes Theravada practitioners from Thailand, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Laos, Burma, and then the diaspora around the world. There's the Mahayana tradition, the northern tradition, which is China, Korea, Vietnam, Japan, Tibet, and on. Then there's the Tibetan Nepalese tradition. And so everybody has a different interpretation of what it means to be, quote, to be a Buddhist. Back in the day, before we had met the Chinese tradition, there were lots and lots of Buddhist sympathizers, which means you read a book, mostly. Maybe you read Kerouac's, Dharma Bums. That was my very first encounter. Maybe you actually found a copy of the Six Patriarch Sutra, so you could be a Buddhist sympathizer, but that nothing transformed. That was completely involving your eyes and your mind. Then when people would go, they'd meet a Theravada teacher perhaps, and do a Vipassana retreat, and you go, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato, Buddham saranam gacchami, before every retreat, I take refuge of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Is that a Buddhist? Well, arguable. In our Chinese Mahayana tradition that you've just seen the film, there's something called taking refuge. And when you take refuge, yes, you do. You kneel in front of the Buddha, you get a Dharma name, you request the teacher to come, and through the teacher, you take refuge with the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha of the 10 directions and 3 periods of time. You can call that teacher your teacher, but in fact, they are the vehicle through which you become a Buddhist. And it's every different monastery does it differently. Our teacher, Master Shren Hua, did a very formal, very ornate ceremony, and you have no doubt when you're done that you've realigned your spiritual horizon with the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha of the past, present, and future. Adding the 5 precepts means that, as Master Mingying in the movie said, say, to the ends of my life, I promise I will never again take life. To the end of my life, I promise I will never again steal. To the end of my life, I promise I will never commit sexual misconduct. I will never tell lies, and I will never use intoxicants. So those are real commitments. And yeah, you are a Buddhist at that point. So, okay, let's see here. I've got a question. Does taking the precepts and vows according to the proper procedure from novices and bhikshu mean that one is gradually becoming a true member of the Buddha family, still with a human form? That's from Will in Shenzhen. Do you want to grab that, Ted, or not?
Again, I'd like to hear your reflections.
Okay, sure. So, what does it mean to be a true member of the Buddhist family? It depends on your mind. There definitely taking refuge is very different from not taking refuge. Taking the precepts is very different from not taking the precepts. And in the Buddhist community, there's all different levels of participation. So you don't have to shave your head and put on a robe to be a, quote, real Buddhist. You can, in your heart, simply hold those precepts without having done so formally in the monastery, but it's not the same. That's kind of like, what would it be? Some people, there are questions here in our list of questions that say, I didn't take the precepts, but I still hold them. Am I holding the precepts? And that's a little bit like saying, I didn't actually enroll in school, but I know everything that a high school graduate knows. Am I considered a high school graduate? Well, you might think so, but you still have to, take your GED or enroll. Did you take the classes? Did you read the books? Did you take the exam? Did you get the grades? If not, well, someone who did wouldn't probably feel the same as you who didn't. So the same way, if you take refuge, if you take the precepts, They say, for example, in our tradition, we say that if you take those 5 precepts, there are invisibly precept protecting spirits who come to support you. And that's, do you believe that or not? You can't see them. That's what the tradition for 2,500 years has said. And you definitely feel different having taken the precepts. So what does it mean to be a real Buddhist? Be sincere, and when the opportunity arises, grab it. Go find a teacher. Go take refuge. So let's see here. Question: the film mentioned that monks do repentance daily during triple platform ordination. Could you explain the importance of doing repentance as a practitioner, Ted? How do you know whether you should dedicate more time to repentance or sutra chanting or meditation? What would you say?
What would I say? I feel like these things are
Dharma questions.
Are very much dependent on the individual and their karmic body that they bring into their practice to the practice, right? So the different practices. But I think that one part of this that's really important, that one of the things that I feel so fortunate to have been able to spend time in these monasteries and with teachers, is you can't underestimate the power of having a teacher, having the mentorship. Someone who has walked the path, sometimes very, very far ahead of you, and can really help you to make sense of where you are at any given time, and then present you with the tools that the tradition, which is a measureless toolbox of practices that you can draw from to move forward on the path as it's in front of you.
Nice.
Jinghui Fa I had one time I had a really special opportunity to meet him, to have a long conversation with him when he was at this Fourth Patriarch's monastery. It's kind of up in the mountains.
Yeah, Suzusu. Yeah.
Suzusu, yeah.
Yeah.
You've visited there.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've talked about that, I believe. Yeah. So he was there, and it was an opportunity to meet him and spend some time with him, because he was always a very engaged and very busy person. So in the conversation that I had, he listened to what I was, I was talking about my practice and some experiences I was having in my meditation practice. And he said one moment, and he went away, and he came back with a text, and he said, "I think if you want to understand this, you need to study this."
Well,
and it was actually shamatha vipassana. So he was a Chan master, but he encouraged me to study shamatha vipassana because.
So basically, counting your breath and watching the thoughts rise.
Yeah, and the observation of the mind through the body, and the observation.
Mute. There we go. That was Singapore. Singapore chiming in.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, that's just one of many, many moments when someone of that capacity, that attainment and practice can hand you a jewel, a tool that was completely off your radar, maybe.
Yeah.
So just an example of that. And
we're quickly running out of time here, but I wanted to reflect the questions here. Thank you, Ted, for sharing this beautiful film. There are a lot of questions about taking refuge, and City of 10,000 Buddhas, drba.org or CTTB USA. There's information about taking refuge if somebody wants to. Let's see here. The question from the Berkeley Monastery. One of the monks in the film mentions the period of time it took for Buddhism to transition from India to China. Do you have any thoughts about what adaptations will be required for Buddhism to establish itself deeply in the West? Specifically, what do you think precept transmissions might look like in the context of American culture?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good one. If I just to reflect on that myself as a filmmaker, I think the reason why I make the films that I make and I engage the communities and the way that I do, it's part of my practice very much, and it's the way that I engage in the communities when I'm there. It's sort of my way to engage, but and to learn, right? To learn and study and follow that inquiry. And I was thinking of what Heng Sure says about we don't understand life, but we have to live our life. I think that is the most profound thing. That was such a beautiful statement, and there's a lot of questions about taking precepts and what does it mean to be a Buddhist, and what does it mean to practice as a lay person. And I think looking at the precepts, there's a lot of resources out there that there's a lot of conversations happening about this. But I feel fortunate that I could represent these traditions as a starting point, maybe for folks who want to consider how they're going to work this into their life. Because when I met with the Dharma, I was in a place, I had no contact with living Buddhist traditions at all. And I had to do a lot to make that contact. But I think seeing these traditions highlights the things that are so important, that are like, tradition and the mentorship of teachers and all of these things.
Right. I'm trying to do justice to the let's see here, to the questions. Justin has a question about translating the title, which I think probably requires more time. He says usually be translated as precepts, you translate it as vows. And Justin, that requires some subtlety, which I think it deserves. But somebody else says they hope that you will make a film about nuns sometime. Somebody else says, let this be our last question. This is really a good one. What is the relationship between filmmaking and spirituality for you? What would you suggest to filmmakers? Thank you, by the way. Very cinematographic. Nice shots.
Thank you. That's something that's really, really important to me right now. If you visit my website, there on my blog, there's an essay that I wrote for a journal that I've published on my blog. It's called Disobeying Space, and it's about it. I talk a lot of detail about this question, but basically, art is about vision. For me, art is about vision. It's about how, and when I say vision, I mean all of the senses. I don't mean just seeing with the eye, but the way you see the world, and the way you see the world inwardly and outwardly. And practice for me is creating a harmony between those inner and outer landscapes. And art for me is a big part of how I take things that are observed in meditation and give them shape and form. And so cinema is an interesting art form because it's so multidimensional. Like life experience, it's very multidimensional. Not as multidimensional as life itself, but it's has that dimension to it, and I think that that's really a really exciting thing to explore. Cinema, where will cinema, or where does cinema sit in the centuries old lineage of Buddhist arts?
Right.
That's something that's very I'm very interested in right now.
Yeah. I know in your last two films, you spent a lot of time on sound. You really on One Mind. You found technicians back in the States who spent lots of work getting the audio experience, making it come alive. And since I was witnessing you do that back then, and then listening back to Vows, today's film, where the audio had not been as carefully done, it's really, really worth it to put that extra, to bring the ears forward into the film experience too. So,
yeah, as an artist watching these older films, that would be one thing that if I went back and made this film again, I would probably change some aspects of the sound design. Sometimes because it's already a very rich sonic environment.
Amen.
But it took some years for me as a filmmaker to get the technical skills to actually hear those things, record them, and then make something of them and later and edit them. So yeah, and I worked with Douglas Quinn on One Mind and on The Mountain Path, and he is a nature sound recordist. That's his passion, and he teaches sound arts. He taught sound arts at the Syracuse Media School, and I was so fortunate to make contact with him through a very serendipitous circumstances and work with him. It was really incredible. It's incredible to work with artists that are just above and beyond in the same way it is to learn from a teacher who's farther on the path. It's a tremendous learning experience. It's really a real blessing.
Yeah. Well, and because particularly One Mind has so much silence in it.
That film, it's what drives, what's moved as a film. Yeah.
Exactly. So to have the sounds, like the sound of the insects and the wind and the hoe, as your teacher, digs in his garden with the hoe, that's just, it's rich, and it becomes a piece of the film. It's a piece of the experience, and that's really one of the things I love. I said I was done with the question, but I keep having questions for it. Okay. So that film of the Carthusian monastery Into the Great Silence is one. It's 4 hours long or something, and there's not a single word exchanged, but it's about a Catholic monastery in France or Belgium, and or Switzerland, I don't know where. But that's people have that as a reference in a handful of films about monasteries, only, that many. And now you've contributed again to this precious, library of monastic experiences that humans can have. In this case, it's Chan Buddhism. And the exciting thing is that it's now in the West, and because your footnote, I didn't mention the subtitles. The subtitle translations of Vows, what we just witnessed, are really spot on. I really, our community is very tuned into Buddhist language and wanting to make it real, and I didn't find anything to argue with. I thought it was right there, So.
Yeah, that was really difficult part of this film because there's so many technical terms being casually and very formally introduced. Right. So I used the text plates to fill in those gaps for
people. What is a bhikshu? You got the Chinese, the Sanskrit, and the English all right there.
I thought that was worth just making those main steps of the process really clear, because I think it helps you to understand everything else that's happening, everything else that's being said, and there's these very sincere and very honest expressions from these practitioners, giving it context. Sometimes those factual things really help. And again, Holmes Welch's book was really helpful because I had a lot of questions about how to translate how to translate these terms. And I know that actually, that's an ongoing conversation, but a fascinating one.
Yeah, well, I don't want to let you go, but I think in fairness to Dharma Realm Buddhist University, our hosts, to Justin, who is our MC, I want to thank Ted Berger and remind people to go to onemindproductions.org or .com.
.com.
One Mind Productions, to find out how you can bring this film into your Zen center, into your practice community, into your yoga group, and get some genuine inspiration into the Chinese Buddhist tradition. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Justin, back to you.
Thank you, Reverend Heng Sure. Thank you very much, Ted. Really appreciate hearing from both of you, and what a wonderful film. Thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a good time and you were inspired. It's just a couple things at the end here, so that you can learn more about Ted's films and stay connected with him. We're going to drop some links in the chat where you can go to his website. You can sign up for his mailing list. You can also stream his films online. There's opportunities there, so you can just kind of learn more and keep up. I also want to let you all know that we're hosting some more events coming up, and I'll give you a little information about that. And then there'll also be a follow-up email to this event, so you won't have to try to remember everything. But if something jumps out at you, then it'll just put that seed in your mind. So we'll also be posting links for all that in the chat. So there's actually going to be some follow-up workshops to this event that are being hosted by some of our Berkeley monks, called Vows, Discovering Our Calling. So that's going to be a 2-part series workshops. And right now the event is full, but the wait list is open. So please feel free to sign up. And maybe if somebody drops out, you can get into that. We also have an online event coming up in mid-April, April 13th at 7:30 California time. And that's kind of exploring AI. So it's called Human Consciousness and AI, Artificial Intelligence. Is there anything unique about the human mind? And we're going to be looking at AI through the lens of Buddhism. That'll be an event with Professor Doug Powers, a DRBU professor and a longtime Buddhist practitioner, a disciple of Master Hua. And then also, if this film inspired you to do a little bit of practice, we have a retreat coming up this summer at the Sudana Center in Ukiah, California. That's on the topic of mindfulness to heartfulness. So as I said, all this stuff is both in the chat, and then it's also going to be in the follow-up email. So if anything catches your interest, follow up with us. We hope to see you again. But thank you so much. And I think that concludes our event. Thank you again, Reverend Heng Sure, Ted. Really, really appreciate it, your presence and your energy. And thanks everybody for joining us.
Amitofo.
Amitofo.